Walk into any car dealership today and try to buy a stick shift. I will wait. Out of roughly 350 vehicles on the American market in 2026, fewer than 30 offer a third pedal. In 1980, more than 1 in 3 cars sold in America had a manual transmission. Today, that number is under 1%. This was not a natural evolution. This was a coordinated decision made in boardrooms. A slow, deliberate execution of the most driver-connected piece of machinery ever bolted into a car. And here is what they never told you about why they really killed it. The manual transmission was there from the beginning. Every early automobile came with one, and for most of the 20th century, knowing how to drive meant knowing how to work a clutch. 3 pedals, your left foot, clutch in, find the gear, release. It was not just a mechanical function. It was a skill, a ritual, a conversation between driver and machine. Then Detroit decided that connection was no longer profitable. When a manual transmission fails, you are looking at $1,500 to $3,000 for a rebuild. When an automatic fails, that number starts at $3,000 and climbs to $6,000 or higher. Manuals last longer, they fail cheaper, and every piece of data from every market where the choice still exists tells the same story. When you give drivers the option, they overwhelmingly take the stick. So why does the stick shift now account for less than 1% of new cars sold in America? And who made that decision on your behalf? In the next 10 minutes, we are going to trace exactly how the third pedal was killed, who gave the order, how the federal government helped without meaning to, and what the last survivors reveal about the industry that buried it. The story most people tell starts in the 1980s, but the real story starts in 1940. General Motors launched the hydromatic automatic transmission in the 1940 Oldsmobile. They sold over 200,000 units in just 2 years. GM did not market the automatic as a convenience. They marketed it as a status symbol. Only modern, prosperous Americans drove automatics. The stick shift was for farmers and foreigners. They were not engineering a better transmission. They were engineering a preference. By 1957, over 80% of domestic American cars already had automatics. The manual's dominance in this country was over before most living Americans were born. The so-called golden age of the stick shift, the 1980 peak of 35% market share, was not a cultural triumph. Oil embargoes in the 70s flooded America with fuel-efficient Japanese and European imports, most of them manual, temporarily reversing a 30-year decline. The second that fuel scare faded, the slide resumed. By 2000, manual share was down to 12%. By 2010, under 6%. Then something happened that turned a gradual retreat into a rout. Modern automatic transmissions, 8 and 9-speed units with electronic shift controls and computer-optimized timing, began outperforming manuals on EPA fuel economy tests. Not in the real world, on the government test. And that distinction is everything. Here is what nobody in Washington or Detroit chose to advertise. The EPA tests automatic transmissions using the car's own software, precisely tuned for that lab cycle. Manual transmissions are tested using prescribed shift schedules that are not optimized for fuel economy. Real-world studies found manuals still deliver 2 to 5% better efficiency with a typical driver and up to 20% better with an expert. But CAFE compliance is measured in the lab, not on the road. The government's own testing handed automakers the cover they needed, and they used it the same day they got it. The first domino was the Chevrolet Corvette. For 66 years, every Corvette sold in America offered a manual transmission. Then in 2019, GM announced the mid-engine C8 would not. No stick, no option, no future plan. Corvette chief engineer Josh Holder explained it plainly. The market was voting with their wallets, he said, and they did not get enough votes. By the final year of the 7th generation C7, only 15% of buyers were choosing the manual. But here is the part that kills the customer choice narrative entirely. No transmission supplier would build a bespoke manual for the C8's unique mid-engine layout. The automaker did not search long enough to find one. The decision was made before the search was finished. Then came the Camaro. The Chevrolet Camaro offered a manual on every engine trim, including the supercharged 650 horsepower ZL1. On November 22, 2023, the last Camaro convertible rolled off the line in Lansing, Michigan, and GM ended the model entirely. Sales had collapsed from 72,000 units in 2016 to under 22,000 by 2021. The market had spoken. GM had spent years scripting the speech. Dodge read from the same page. The Challenger offered its 6-speed Tremec manual on every trim, including the 717 horsepower Hellcat. 35% of Hellcat buyers chose the stick, a number that should have been impossible in a market where manuals were supposedly irrelevant. But in 2022, Dodge quietly suspended the Hellcat manual entirely. Not because buyers stopped wanting it, because the supercharged V8 could no longer be emissions calibrated with the manual in the drivetrain. Only the automatic could pass the test. They brought the stick back for one final model year, ran the 7 last call special editions, and closed the chapter after 2023. No manual in the replacement. It gets worse when you look at Volkswagen. American GTI buyers were choosing the manual at 50%, half. Golf EAR buyers were at 40%. And in 2025, Volkswagen dropped the manual from both models anyway. The reason had nothing to do with American demand. 95% of worldwide GTI buyers chose the automatic DSG. Euro 7 emissions regulations made separate manual certification financially unworkable. The American enthusiast had 0 votes in a global ledger. This is the mechanism the industry will not say out loud. When you sell globally, the majority rules. America is the smallest manual market on the planet, and that makes American manual buyers the most economically irrelevant group in the industry. It does not matter that half of American GTI buyers chose the stick, or that Hellcat buyers chose it by the tens of thousands. Those numbers do not exist in a spreadsheet built for 95 million annual global sales. Automakers restricted the manual to base trims where it felt cheap, or extreme performance trims where it felt niche. Take rates fell. Falling take rates justified the next removal. They manufactured the evidence for the execution, and they did it slowly enough that no one could point to the moment it happened. The numbers tell you exactly what was stolen. A clutch replacement runs $1,000 to $1,500, and a clutch can last 60,000 to 150,000 miles. An automatic torque converter failure alone runs $600 to $1,800, and when it fails, metal debris can contaminate the entire transmission, turning a moderate repair into a $4,000 rebuild. A manual gearbox properly maintained can survive 300,000 miles. An automatic typically tops out at 200,000. The resale market has kept its own verdict. A 2015 Subaru WRX with a manual averaged $19,200 in 2023. The CVT version of the same car, $15,800, a 21% premium for the stick. Manual Porsche 911s routinely sell for $10,000 more than their automatic equivalents. The market has always understood the value. The industry simply stopped supplying it. And then there is the theft story. No federal agency tracks vehicle theft by transmission type. But police departments across the country report the same pattern. Thieves steal automatics, not manuals. When fewer than 18% of American drivers can operate a stick shift, a clutch pedal is the most effective anti-theft device on the market. You cannot steal what you cannot drive. Now go back to where we started. Fewer than 30 models out of 350. Here is what their take rates prove about who is actually making this choice. 90% of Subaru BRZ buyers choose the manual when offered. 85% of WRX buyers. 83% of Porsche 911 GT3 touring buyers. 61% of Cadillac CT4V Blackwing buyers. 71% of Toyota GR Corolla buyers. These are not sentiment numbers. These are purchase decisions made by real people with real money. The demand was never the problem. The supply was. The Toyota Tacoma is now the only pickup truck in America with a manual transmission. The Jeep Wrangler and Ford Bronco are the last manual SUVs. In 2025, America lost its final 5-speed entirely when the Nissan Versa's base gearbox was discontinued. Minivans, full-size trucks, crossovers, luxury sedans, hybrids, every electric vehicle, all manual-free. The surviving models can be listed in a single paragraph. 5 years from now, possibly a single sentence. And yet here is the ending that nobody predicted. Toyota is building a simulated 6-speed manual for electric vehicles, a physical clutch pedal, a real H-pattern shifter, software that can recreate a stall, replicate the weight of any historical gearbox, and fake the rev hang of an engine that no longer exists. Expected to arrive in a Lexus around 2026, it is either the most committed act of preservation the automobile world has ever seen, or a funeral parlor that has learned to mimic the breathing of the deceased. The manual transmission was not killed by the marketplace. The demand never went away. The supply did. It was killed by global production math, a federal testing regime that tilted the playing field without meaning to, and a business model that found the automatic more profitable to sell and more expensive to fix. The third pedal is not gone yet. But the question is no longer whether the stick shift can survive electrification. The question is whether we will let the corporations decide, again, without asking us, that our connection to the machine is not worth the cost of the option. If this story made you want to find a 6-speed and drive it until the clutch gives out, hit subscribe. There are more stories like this one, about the machines they took away and the ones still worth fighting for.